Rhys, welcome back to the podcast, brother. Round two. I think our first one was 3-4 years ago now. I reckon.
Yeah.
Been a lot just happened between then and now, man. Before we dive into a number of things I want to, cover in today's episode, brother. Obviously, I've been fortunate enough to be working with you over the last couple of months. Mm-hmm. We've obviously, again, known each other for a fairly long time now, and I've taken so much value from even before we were doing coaching together, right? Even just from your free content and just being in the proximity of someone like yourself. I'd love for the audience to get an understanding a bit more about, your origin story, if we want to call it that. Like, how do we get to the point where we're at today, man? And where did it all start for you? Essentially, or particularly around the business side of things in particular.
Okay. The business side of things was more of I was being asked for help more often after I'd already built my own thing. And I got asked enough times that it just came a logical next step. What I originally built was a coaching company that still exists now. Online coaching company built up to having at its peak a total of 16, 17 staff on the coaching side, a bunch on the back end as well. And that all started initially in a good life, in a small gym, overfilled with personal trainers. And the only way to stand out was to be decent. I got decent. I think at that point it was the market was not what it is today, and the respect for education that people have in the coaching fitness industry was not the same. So it was very easy to stand out. So I got decent. I got busy, and then traded a bunch of time for money, and eventually just realized that wasn't sustainable. Some things happened. I think it was like I went through a breakup with a partner, friends that had just kind of like started to fizzle out, and at that time I was still I would have been maybe 21, 22, and realized that just trading time for money for, at that level at least, was not enjoyable, nor sustainable. So I pivoted. Into pushing into an online space. I think we were mostly online by 2016. Had hired a couple staff by that point as well. And the only type of in-person that we did was I signed up to a gym just to pay the rent, just to get the lead so I could fill my staff. They never stepped foot in there. It was just selling people straight into an online model. We did that up until the point of lockdowns. We were already in a good place. We already had good market share. We had a good product, and we knew the online space well. And then with more people at home and able to commit, they were bored, they had the government's money. It kind of divine intervention, perfect storm, and we just took off. So from there, it was after COVID, built a gym that has now been trademarked of no, you can't come. The plan was never to open it. Clients included. It was always just a space for myself, my staff, and a playground to have fun in. And once I did that, it got a bit of attention, and then business mentoring was born.
Before we get to that conversation, what would you say were the key pillars of growth and scale within the Livingstone business in particular? I know there's going to be a lot of coaches listening to this podcast today, and I think there's going to be so much gold from our conversation, but it may have changed from then to now. But what were the main pillars that you felt had the biggest difference or the biggest needle movers to go from, starting out in that online space to getting it to essentially where it is today, to the point where it's, obviously impacting a shit ton of people, but at the same time, it's become a very successful business?
I think principally, there's one thing that hasn't changed, and that is who, not how. It's decentralized control. I think that when you're in a place where you're trying to scale your business, as the business owner, the first time founder, it feels like that, you should do everything, you're the best for the job. I was not. And that is still, no matter the position of the business now, if people are trying to grow their business to, whichever marginal next level, it's not going to be you. Like, you're not the person for the job. And I think understanding the principle of decentralized control of how do I duplicate and replicate and push this knowledge transfer onto the next person, that's the biggest pillar for growth. You can hustle your way to your first 7 figures as a solopreneur. I think it's doable. It's hard, but it's doable. But pushing up past multi 7-figure, it's about manpower. And I think that was the biggest principle that I struggled with. I struggled to adapt to, I struggled to learn, and you kind of have to trust first. I think that from a principal perspective, trust first. Hiring staff, especially when you have no idea what you're doing to hire staff, how do you expect them to?
Yeah.
The first time you hire people, it's going to suck, right? So accept that you're probably going to get it wrong, except that they're probably gonna have to fail and they need to have the space to fail forward. So this is where like, okay, if we're looking at what fuels that is predictable acquisition, we need to know that like, where is our next lead coming from so you can pay appropriately for the staff and you can have a buffer that will allow them to kind of move forward and not be having the pressurized situation where it's like, well, if I make one mistake, it's all over. So we need predictable acquisition. And then from, I guess, a pillar of growth is far too many people look to spend money on paid ads before they nail down their organic growth strategies.
Yeah.
So I think like getting clear on like, what are your content requirements? How do you speak to the audience that actually wants to pay you? And if, you know, your early conception of what your client is not the same as what it future paced is. Like if early on you want to train people and coach people, or even if we work outside of fitness industry, it's like you take on clients that have a pulse and have money, right? If you don't have stable cash flow, you don't have predictability, you can't be picky. And so like when I say getting clear on the content that talks to the people that want to pay you, that can be broad in the beginning.
Can and should be broad in the beginning.
Yeah. You niche niching down, especially in an organic space.
Yeah.
Is rushed more often than not. If you're doing paid, it makes a lot of sense to niche because you want to speak directly to a market, get that message in front of one person. And when they hear that creative or they hear that piece of media, it's like, oh, that's me. But when it's organic and you're kind of just, you know, you're throwing things out for the algorithm to pick up and take, you kind of need to intentionally be broad and solve bigger problems that are widely accepted by larger amounts of people.
I think today an effective piece of content, particularly from a business owner or content creator, often gets looked at as obviously the amount of engagement with those pieces of content. One of the things I know we spoke about in the first episode, which I'm keen for you to kind of share again here, is can you give the listeners some insight into the sheer amount of volume of organic content you guys were doing? Because I think when the focus is so much on, is this good or bad content based off the engagement? If they were to look essentially at some of the engagement numbers across your content, it would come across as bad. Yeah. Badly performing, right? Yeah. But the sheer volume of it, you know, allows you to become a hell of a lot more omnipresent as well. Can you give us some insight into how much volume you were doing?
I think Hormozy has made this more popularized, but volume predicates luck. And that where you have more shots on goals, you have more opportunity to be more widely spread and omnipresent, as you said. We were at our peak of content production, producing more than 20 short form pieces of content a day. And when I say producing, posting more than 20 pieces of short form per day. Of which we were, our daily viewership or, you know, isolated acute viewership per video was low, right? In comparison to what it would be if we were only posting, say, 3 times per week. But the total volume across the week was near tenfold. So like the viewership as an isolated experience, well, sure, it was low, but like people build trust in long form exposure. So like people don't come to a point of wanting to buy. They reach this cliff. The way I describe this is like they're hiking up this cliff and they get to this point, this cliff top, but they sit there on the edge for a very long time before they jump and like, I'm ready to buy. And it's like, it might take, 20, 30 short form pieces of content to get them on this edge of the cliff, but they will generally sit there for a long time until that trust is completely acquired and then they inquire. Now, if you're just in their feed every few hours with something new, the likelihood of building trust and stacking those exposures is faster, easier, and more importantly, more trackable. So this isn't not a conversation. I don't think I've explained this well in the past that yes, we pushed up to 20 posts per day. We didn't stay there. Like we found it, we used it as data and figured out what at the time our market responded to. So we have, and this might sound like, hard. It is. It's because most people don't do this. And that's why most people don't actually grow businesses of the size that they want to. We had a spreadsheet that would track, and we had like automated Zapier integrations that every time we posted, it would update first thing 6 a.m. in the morning. All of our posts would get added to the sheet. We would be able to see views, engagement, sends, all the top of funnel data that you can see on the platform. And we would then also be able to like say, okay, how long is this video? Length of time. What was the hook? What was the topic? And that allowed us to devise a pathway that was most relatable to the clients that were purchasing. And so we then could create more content that was aligned to our best performing content. And when I say performing, I don't mean vanity metrics. I mean the ones that drove cash to our bank account, created the shortest bridge from the client's pocket to ours.
Yeah.
And that's where I think people they get confused with what content is intended to do. There is some content that is purely intended for awareness, at which, yes, vanity metrics, shares, saves and sends, so on, they are very, very important just to widen the network. But when we're looking at content that converts, it normally has the largest divorce rate between awareness or like viewership and dollars made. You look at yourself, like whenever you post a before and after photo, they typically get the lowest engagement. They also get the most inquiries.
Yeah.
So it's like knowing what to track here. And as I said, we didn't stay at the 20. We pushed and found, we looked at this data on a weekly basis. We were very able and very quickly, we could see the similarities between the content that performed and the ones that didn't. The topics, the hooks, the seconds, the length, etc. So we just produced more of that.
On this note, is there a black and white answer to like when that time should be to go from like when you essentially feel like you've tapped out on organic content to then start putting your time and energy in to the paid stuff? Because I know, I guess a second consideration here that probably gets overlooked, one that I'd overlooked essentially before, you and I were working together as well, is like if you are going to then shift into the paid advertising, you would also want to, be pretty fucking confident that your process is in order so that you are actually capitalizing on, the paid traffic that you're now getting.
I think there's also a conversation around like people think it's one or the other. And I don't think it's I don't think it's a black and white. I think it's a spectrum of to which degree do you do what one. So for example, like if you move only into paid ads and go, okay, now my focus is on paid acquisition and I stop doing organic growth strategy and I stop posting as frequently, your cost of acquisition will go up. Because when someone has a first exposure to you from that ad, they click to your profile and the last post you made was last fucking February, they're like, oh, I don't have anything new to consume. So they can only buy on face value of what they see in that paid advertising. Whereas if you are driving organic growth strategies as well, you will shorten the sales cycle, you will get them, you'll build trust faster, so on and so forth.
There'd almost be an argument then in that case to be like, and I don't know if I've intentionally done this or not. I feel like I've always just posted a shit ton of organic content, not the volume that we were talking about before, but very consistent. Mm-hmm. I almost look at it like, well, if I'm going to be investing into paid advertising, like I'm essentially going to double down on my organic content anyway to become more omnipresent. And again, as you said, when someone comes to my page, if it is the first time they've ever seen my content through paid ads, I want them to see that I'm extremely active. I want them to be able to essentially be hooked into my kind of universe as much as possible.
You want to try and reduce the cost of acquisition, because that's what creates scalable ads.
Yep.
Like if you can, let's say the ad is the thing that attracts them and that gets them to follow the account, but then 3, 4, 5 days later, they go through your organic lead gen process of filling out your form. Like, okay, are they attributed to the ad spend or are they attributed to the organic growth?
Yeah,
choose, right? But regardless, when you start to like drive more people through your organic pipeline as well, it circumvents ad spend. Because like if you're structured appropriately and you have let's say even a small onboarding fee, you can start to circumvent your ad cost off clients that didn't even come from ads. So it's a win-win.
Win-win.
As for when you go ads, I think to your point, I'm a big fan of not building on a foundation of sand. So having your process solid, you have more leeway with organic growth.
Yep.
You have a little bit more lenience. You have a little bit more tolerance and forgiveness to potential shit. Where like if someone is onboarded to your process and they've built trust with you over 6 months, 12 months, and they've seen you have great results and so on. And this goes for outside of fitness too. If you have, you're a tech firm and you've delivered incredible results on app deliveries, right? And they've seen that and they've seen the build throughout the process of, their time following you organically. They then get onboarded and then perhaps, okay, maybe you are a little bit slower on delivery, or perhaps like you miss something, like there's a spelling mistake on their landing page, or their program comes in a touch later. Like, okay, there's a little bit of leeway here because they have so much trust to buffer that. Whereas if it's coming straight in from a paid ad, very little trust and you have very little forgiveness throughout that process. So big fan of at the very least, to solidify your first 7 days of experience with the customer, automating what you can, making for fast delivery where possible, and ensuring that it actually works.
Yeah.
That's what I would be like, okay, first 7 days, is that plan specific and intentional? If you have that, then sure, paid ads are a viable option at any point.
Yeah.
As long as you have cash flow.
A question that I brought up in a number of interviews recently, particularly with people that I look at as extremely successful in their field, in their industry, and that I've taken a lot of value from. And someone like yourself, who I look at as, if I'm going to be honest, I look at you as someone who is just a born entrepreneur, right? That's how it comes across, right? Someone that just lives and breathes this shit. Do you, two-part question, do you feel like it is something that you are either born with or not? Mm-hmm. And secondly, there are a number of business owners out there, and I was included in this conversation, who felt like they needed to build the business in a certain fashion because that's what's deemed as successful in terms of adding staff and building and scaling in a way where you are essentially starting to manage people and build in that direction. Mm-hmm. But if I use myself as an example, I very quickly realized that's just not what I wanted, right? Mm-hmm. And so is there a bit of a spectrum, or is there a bit of a decision matrix that you feel like people can run through to decide like what avenue they should go down to play to their strengths and what they naturally are kind of good at?
There's a conversation around built, not born. And I think there are people I think it is a spectrum. I think there are people that are born with natural inclination to make better decisions when it comes to growing a business, that are perhaps less emotional, less reactive, have a high tolerance to stress. And when I say tolerance, it's not just the fact that they are unweathered in the storm and they don't react. It's they react and recover fast. So I think there are some things that are, whether it be nature versus nurture, there are some things like that, of like the inability to react or react aggressively, have a fast reaction rather, and then move back to a point of baseline and take action. That is large. I would say that is a matter of nurture. So like, their situation of their upbringing, of what happened in their younger years, what happened, and like because ultimately running a business is just learned behavior. I believe that a lot of it is built, not born.
Yep.
There are definitely things that people can have a head start on, but I have clients that I work with that had no desire to run a business, no direction to run a business. I'll give one guy in particular a shout out. His name's Nate. He's a weapon, doing really well. His business doing incredibly well. I said to him on a conversation last week, and I said, "Oh man, like you got to remember, like you're only a couple of years into this." He's like, "Pause. I'm 14 months into this," and he was a fitter and turner. He was essentially a tradesman covered in oil every day, 14 months ago. Like, and he says that every call is like, "Man, I don't know business. I just do what you tell me to do." I'm like, "Whoa, you like have some credit, like." You do know what you're doing. You're getting way better. And like for his case, he was never born a business owner. It was built. He's learnt and he's figured out a process and way to stand out from the crowd that he works in. So in his case, like, yeah, it's sure not born at all, but he's building the skill set that will allow him to move and grow. So I think it's going to be it's a matter of inputs. How fast do people react? What are the reactions? As far as a decision framework for myself of like, which direction to take, I use something taught to me by JP Donnell. He's a ex-Navy SEAL, works pretty closely with Jocko Willink. And he says it's an OODA loop. So it's orient, observe, decide, and act. So whenever the analogy he gave me is if you get dropped in a lake, right? The lake is as so big that you can't comprehend how far the shore is, but you know it's a lake. If you know it's a lake, you know that there is a shore, right? So instead of sitting there treading water, and eventually you will drown, you may as well just decide. You may as well swim in a direction, right? And then you will get to a waypoint. You orient, you look around, you observe, what are my options? Can I go left, right, straight, right? But the biggest factor is you just need to decide. The faster you decide and then act, it will allow you to restart that loop.
Yep.
And like to your point of like, well, is growth an option, or in which direction should I grow? Like you got to choose your heart, right? Like staff, sales, it all comes with operational drag, and like there's always shit, right? There's always a problem to face, whether it be I want to run my company lean. Okay, I want to have huge amounts of profits. Okay, well, sure, you're going to pay more tax. That's one of the problems you accept by running a leaner business. If your profits are higher, there will be more tax, right? There will also come other problems that you then go, okay, well, if I'm running lean, and I only have myself, maybe a couple of PAs, VAs, and so on. Well, where's the skill? Because sometimes you can only grow as far as your bandwidth will allow.
Yep.
And like, you know, unless you're ever growing and you are omnipotent where you think and then things happen, you're probably going to need help, right? And so running lean will mean that you're probably going to have to invest more in like mentorships and courses and learning more and just upskilling. Whereas if you run less lean and have more staff, ideally you hire someone that's better than you, that knows more than you, and then you save money in that way, right? But then you have to manage people. So like the short answer is growth is an option. And I think that I've said this for a very long time, that I talk now, like, you know, back when I first got into the business mentoring world, it was like, you know, hitting your multi 6-figure business. And now I'm talking to the people that want to hit their first 7 figures and beyond. And even back when I first started talking about the business stuff, about like, you know, making your first 6 figures, like this is said with a grain of salt, with a big fucking asterisk. It is a choice and it is not mandatory. Like I have friends in my life that earn less than 6 figures in a normal job and they are happy. They are objectively happier than most people I know. So like you do not have to grow. And that's the first thing is like the social pressure to grow and move forward is like, that's your choice. Live your life how you want to. So like it's not a matter of, hey, you must build to a 7-figure business. Like if you want to, accept that will come with sacrifice, accept that will come with problems, issues, and probably a whole lot of potential readjustment of priorities. So like priorities as a singular, like you can only have one. Like your singular priority, there is always one above the others. So the phrase priorities is like something I kind of aggressively disagree with. It's like you have a priority and then everything else comes after.
Yep.
At which point, if you want to build to 7, 8 figures, the priority is going to be work. Like the priority is going to be hard shit work. And if you're ready for that, that's fine. If you're not, there is a lot of happiness to be had in other businesses that don't go that far.
Yeah, correct.
So
it was interesting. We, over the last few weeks, obviously we started running these masterminds, and you're at the first one. And it's funny, in particular, the first women's one we did last week, there was a number of people who the conversation steered in the direction of kind of reaching this peak where on paper it looks like it's the kind of like the pinnacle and all the hard work's paid off, and they're finally reaching that kind of gold mine of like, this is what we've been working towards. Only to realize that what I actually really enjoyed was maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I thought I needed to grow so much more, and now they're actually going back in that direction to spend more time there because that's what was fulfilling.
It's an interesting
that's what
cycle.
felt more successful, or not even successful. It felt more fulfilling.
Yeah. It's an interesting cycle. Like I look at my life now and I have essentially come back to zero. And it's like coming back to the origin story where I sat in a gym and I trade time for money for people that, you know, weren't all that fun to train. I thought I was more skilled than what I was working with. Not in that sense, but now I'm trading time for money again. Like I built an online business, built a staff, exited myself from that company, ultimately only showed up for meetings, and then eventually didn't show up to meetings at all. And that company still rolled and ran. And then I launched business mentoring. It was like, okay, how do I build that? What do I know? What can I guarantee? What do I have control over? My time. Okay, cool. I'm going to trade that. I'm just going to trade it at a way higher ticket. And I love the businesses that I work with, largely because I'm very good at saying no. Like I don't take people on that I don't want to work with.
Yep.
But nonetheless, I'm still trading time, right? Far less time, right? But that reaches a point of non-scalability, like the conversation around active income, it reaches a ceiling based on the amount of time you are willing to give. Could I start taking on 10 meetings a day? Sure. Do I want to? No. Like I am not willing. Like there's a really good book. I think it's called, can't remember.
We'll link it in.
Yeah, it was.
We'll link it in the show notes if he ever remembers.
Yeah,
it.
no, it's a yellow cover. It's something along the lines of, it's not, I'll send it over to you. But the main thought process here is like, one of the major anchor points is, are you willing? And like, I'm unwilling to trade that much time. So the premise of this book is like how to unfuck your mindset, essentially, right? How to deal with the bad days, even when things are horrible. It's how to move forward anyway. And one of the things that they discuss is like, are you willing? Like, if you start every framework and any decision that you need to make a choice, it's like, are you willing to accept the consequence of insert whichever direction, right? And I'm unwilling to trade 10 hours a day on meetings with business owners because that will compromise the other things I want to do, like building out digital products and helping with other platforms. But nonetheless, I'm still trading time for money now. And that is largely a full circle position. I've come right back to the place I was in 2011, 2012 when I first started personal training. I'm just trading time for money at a higher scale now.
Well, to your point, like you said before, and we were having the conversation around the ebbs and flows of reaching certain points only to realize that maybe the enjoyment was a few levels below. I think it's so important for people that are listening, particularly that in the early stages of business, it's not a bad thing to trade time for money. If that is something that is fulfilling for you and is working for you, I think there's this almost this notion now where it's like, as soon as people get into business, it's like, oh, well, fuck, I can't trade time for money.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Also, fulfillment's a funny word because like I think that fulfillment is learned. Like
a skill.
Yeah, it's a skill. Fulfillment is a skill. Like to feel fulfilled, to be fulfilled from a task, it's to attribute meaning to that task. And especially it's a personal bias meaning. So like for me to feel fulfilled, like will I feel fulfilled by changing the lights in this facility? Probably not. But if I was an electrician that had done years of trade and really knew the intricacies of whatever downlights these are, these are more fun to change than say a normal house light. Is that more fulfilling? Like it's subjective to the person.
Yeah.
So fulfillment as a whole, I don't think people should chase. I think fulfillment is something that people should learn because like, yes, it is like if we speak objectively, fulfillment, is it more fulfilling for me to sit at home on the couch with my partner and my dog? Yes. Like that is more fulfilling. But does that build the future that I want that will then be more fulfillment later? No. So fulfillment is not just this isolated point in time. So chasing fulfillment through inactive or passive income when you're first starting out it sounds a bit naive. Like I think you need to get clear of like when you're starting a business, like what is it you're starting for? And most people will say impact. We're like, okay, cool. Why don't you start a charity then? Like if you're charging for it, it's not just about impact. It's also about money. Like you're trying to pay bills. So if we get clear on, okay, you want to make more money. Okay, what's more predictable? You trading your time or hoping that the algorithm picks you up and sells your ebook? Way more predictable, way more easy to scale your time to a point.
Within your network, the people who are running businesses essentially like yourself of going all in, right? We've just had the discussion around like whether it's solopreneur, whether it is, building out a team, whatever it is like you have to make that commitment and there's going to be a lot of shit that is not necessarily that fucking fun to do, right? How important then is that conversation around loving what you do or having a passion for what you do? And for, again, within your network, those that are at that top level of success, in your opinion, what percentage of them love what they do in comparison to just being really fucking good at what they do?
I think they all love the outcome of what they do. I don't necessarily think that many people always love what they do because doing the work is largely boring. It's also largely unseen. Like anyone I know that has any degree of like measurable success, a large amount of the work happens behind the closed doors of the work you'll never see. So it's boring, it's unrecognized, and it's hard. So I don't think many people love that. I think they love the outcome. It's like, people say, you need to learn to love the climb and to appreciate the view. It's like, I think the view is the thing that pulls you forward. I think like would you climb no matter what indefinitely knowing there was no view? Probably not. So like loving the process, it's like, I have it like literally have it here, like fuck your feelings. Like it's because you do it despite the feeling. It's it's what is on the other side that will allow you to weather the storm and trudge through the shit. Like loving the work, I don't think is necessary. Loving the outcome of the work is what I think drives people. Whether that be recognition, money, status, power, freedom. Like it's loving the option of outcome.
Yep.
And I think keyword option, because like, I often talk to friends and like, even what are you going to do when you're old? I'm like, I'm not going to stop working. I'll do stuff. I will find something to do until I get to a point where I can no longer work. And it's like, okay, then it's like, what next? I just die. Okay. So I will work until then. But so that means like, yes, I enjoy the work, but it's more so that I enjoy what that buys me, whether that buys me freedom, time, status, power, anything in between. Like, I think that that is a consistent pursuit. And I don't think you ever get like how do you measure too much money? Like scoreboard's the scoreboard, it can always go up. How do you measure too much status? How do you measure too much impact? How do you measure, like, they're not tangible.
Yep.
Because there can always be more.
Is there a moment that stands out to you, a pivotal moment of either advice or a bit of a realization within business that kind of changed the path of where you've pushed everything in your career so far?
Yeah, I think there's a period of time where this kind of goes hand in hand what I was saying. There was a period of time where I was only chasing outcome. And this was back when I was still like more hands-on with Livingstone, in that we were chasing a top line goal and like really trying to push to a $5 million year. And with that as the North Star, I started to forget about what was the things actually taking us to the 5 mil. And that was customer experience, customer journey. And like, whilst I was still very tied to the numbers of like, what are our retentions? What's our like acquisition metrics? All of the fun stuff, or at least the stuff I find fun. I wasn't paying attention to the closely related data to the client, which is like net promoter score. How well are they doing? What's their experience? And we were going through this phase where it was just, 2 steps back, three steps forward. It was just up, down, and we were kind of hovering at this point around the 4.8. And it was a conversation with a friend of mine who was just like, the answer is not in the numbers. And this is like, might sound very contradictory to what people know me for, as being the guy that will look over the numbers religiously.
Yep.
But the answer to the problem is not in the numbers, is in the experience. And that's what I think, if I had to learn that earlier, I would have been more able to see that not only could we upsell people more appropriately and faster, we could have had plans like our retention was good, acquisition was low, but low in comparison to industry standard, but not low enough. And this is where like, the whole understanding of there are no rules in business kind of is a little bit dangerous. It's a dangerous notion, because when there are no rules, there are no guidelines. And if there are no guidelines, you don't know what you're doing. So I was under the impression, I was like, because I was working with business owners at the time, I was like, okay, comparing to other people's churn and looking at our churn, ours was sitting at like a 8-9% as an average churn rate. I was like, that's really good. Where I was looking, everyone was looking at like around the best in class of all the businesses that I was looking at was 16%. Like, oh, we're like twice as good, but like the data pool was shit. So like I then I had to have some more conversations with people that I look up to that, have built businesses into the multi 8 figures, 9 figures. I was like, okay, what's a good churn in other industries? And when we look at like churn overall in a tech platform, it's 3% year over year. Like, and that's what they target.
Yep.
All right, 3% monthly average year over year. Like, okay, sweet, we have work to do.
Yep.
So like, I think the advice that was pivotal for me is like, it's not in the numbers, it's in the experience. But then also like, you need better measuring sticks. Because if you're measuring against like, summarize it, leaders don't look left. Right? Like if you are in a market and you are just looking at your competitors that are either as good as you or worse than you, you're using an incorrect measuring stick. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So that's why like mentorship and like, getting, ahead, leaders look like the term leaders don't look left. It's like leaders look forward and very far forward. Like, and an example that I used to say to people, like when people would say like, oh, what would you look for? Me personally in a mentor, I would say, oh, I want someone that has built the business that is just ahead of me so that they are closer to the problem, so they know how to solve it. And experience now tells me that I was wrong, that you want to look for someone that is way ahead, right? We're talking like, if you're a 6-figure business, it's someone that's done multi-7, right? If you're a 7-figure business, it's someone that's done into the 8s and 9s. Because if you start going left and you make a decision and the person that's close to the problem says, yeah, that's a great idea, but the next revenue bracket, 500K up, the next higher, oh, you're in some trouble. If you've gone that way, you're gonna have to go all the way back and go right. So it's knowing not just the next 2-3 moves, it's knowing what's 10 moves ahead. So you go, hey, I know this feels like a good idea now, but hey, in 6 months, you're going to be absolutely screwed if you don't plan for this. And that's where I've got like, I've got a lot of leverage with the people I work with, because I can, the the scars that I have built and the battle scars that I've earned through business is largely around like hiring, firing, scalability. And those things are like, the obvious answer feels like, I'm just going to hire the loser. I'm just going to hire the person that's easy to control. Bad idea. Hire the skilled person. Hire the person that will take you to the next level.
To the next level. What's the number one thing that you've changed your mind on over the years in regards to business?
This is a very long thread. So I'll give you some backstory to this. A few years ago, I used to be of the opinion that, I had signed up to mentorships. I'd spent a large amount of money on marketers, advertisers, the next shiny object, the next thing, and all of which did not work, right? Mm. And then we fast forward years into the future and I go, oh, that one thing that person said that I still think might be a bit of the thing that they said works now. I'm like, oh, okay. I just wasn't ready for that advice. I just wasn't ready for what they were talking about. And where that festered into this situation where I was very me versus them, me versus the market, like my way, like we grew a multi-7-figure business without doing paid advertising at all. So I was like, anyone that's telling you that just to run ads is a charlatan, they're just going to steal your money and run away, because that's what had happened to me. So I was young, immature, and unaware of the filters that I was putting on the world. And overarching thing that I have changed my mind on is that most of the people, even now, most of the people that maybe have less good of a reputation in the business consulting space, they're probably doing what they're doing because they're trying to get the fastest and most easy guaranteed win, whether that be telling you to message 100 strangers a day, whether that be pay X amount on paid ads. It's largely because they probably care about their reputation and they actually want you to succeed. And by you just putting in effort, like I said before, you can control your active work. By them getting to you to put in active effort, they can get you closer to an outcome with more predictability. So the thing I've changed my mind on is that the industry is less intentionally bad. I think people just lack execution. And I don't think there is as many people just completely trying to steal from other business owners. I think they're actually trying to help. They just lack the execution or the experience. And that just kind of comes down to like, they probably haven't built anything real themselves. Yep. And they've got to a point where it got too hard for them and just got, it's easier to tell other people what to do, which it is objectively easier. It's like you look at, not to go too down the rabbit hole, but like you look at like personal training managers in most gyms aren't necessarily personal trainers that have done really well. Like they wouldn't have taken management role if they were. Yep. So, and you see this in a large cases across trade, across tech. It's like the person often doing the advising is like often, not always, but is the person that couldn't do the job. They just got an opportunity to tell other people how to do the job. So I look to was it earned, not given? If the position was earned, sweet, they've got the experience. If it was assumed and given, it's putting that work in it's a requirement. But I think the thing I've changed my mind on most is the industry is less bad than I thought it was. Yeah. Nice. I think there is still a lot of shit, but I think people are actually genuinely trying to help. And a lot of the advice that I was given early that like I saw to have wasted my money on and time, I see it now as it's building a bridge. Like any advice you get over your entrepreneurial journey is like the stuff that will grow you is the stuff that's building the bridge for the 3, 4, 10 steps ahead of where you are, of where you reach this chasm. You're like, I need skills to cross to that next level. And when you get there, you realize like, oh, the bridge is half built because I've worked with John, Bob, and Billy that all gave me different ideas and different thought processes that I just didn't use then. But now they're helping me build the bridge forward.
I often talk about the power of exposure, like the law of exposure, right? Even if we use the example of mentorship, that's one thing that I have seen time and time again for myself in my business and my life, and even just with clientele, getting exposed to things that aren't currently normal for me, to normalize them as quick as possible so that it becomes something that you essentially can build the belief that is, for you, essentially, right? Is there anything that stands out to you in terms of you being exposed to a level of something within business that you had not experienced or been exposed to before that drastically changed the path of your career, I guess you could say?
think the thing that stands out most, and it's got nothing to do with like the fitness coaching space, but the thing that stands out most to me, so I went to a Kerwin Ray event. He's since passed away, but he was someone that I looked up to. I worked with quite closely.
We had him on last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy. I think I messaged you when he first passed, and it was, a very sad day. But at one of his events, it was at a point where I saw him talking to a room. It was probably 300 people in this room. I was like, okay, there is a lot of people in here that have paid a large amount of money to learn whatever it is that is in his brain. And I wasn't doing business mentoring then, but I did say to the person that I went with, I was like, I want to do this stuff. This is the stuff that, like, being in this room and seeing, because that was the first time I'd gone to anything large scale like personal development. And I remember writing down and putting it into a place where I was like, okay, this is now on my radar, that this is a possibility, that people will listen to skill set and want to sit in a room for 2 full days to hear someone speak. And whether that be me like having an ego at the time, which I don't think is a bad thing, by the way. I think an ego is not a bad thing ego is the action that drives action sometimes. Like, it's either fear of failure that you just really want, it will get you up and go, or it's the ego to like, well, I'm going to prove you. So like, don't know whether it was ego, whether it was fear of failure, whatever it might have been, but that was definitely a catalyst to me being like, there is more to just training people to be less fat and more healthy. And that is something that I want to do.
I want to ask you one more thing about some recollection of moments, right? On that note, not necessarily being exposed to something that you weren't already aware of, but is there a moment with a client in particular or someone that you have worked with that has essentially shocked you, or that has impressed you after they have kind of gone, they've taken your advice, or they've learnt from you and produced a result that surprised even you?
Yeah, I think most notably, the first time I had a client say to me, I just hate doing sales calls. Like, I hate doing sales calls. I was like, yeah, it feels like, I get it. He wasn't good on the phone. He didn't really like the whole process of getting people booked, people standing them up, et cetera, et cetera. We had a brief discussion of like, man, it's not ideal, but give it a crack at just selling it through the DMs. And the first time I saw a sell by chat work was not actually by me doing it, it was by me coaching it. So me telling him how to sell through a chat and like ramping appropriately, not just dropping the price on the first message and, adding a bit of framework to it. First time I saw that happen, I was like, okay, that's a different world. And he knew that I was completely operating out of theory. And that's something that like I'll own. If I'm teaching someone something that is theory that I have not actually actioned myself, I'll just say, hey, like, don't have any data to suggest that this will work. I have some anecdotal evidence of blah, blah, blah. And here is my thought process to why, but we're going to test it. And I test aggressively. We'll do a 3-day test cycle. If it's shit, we'll just cut it. But yeah, that was the first time I saw that work. And now that's a model that I teach a lot of people, where it's like, okay, you can sell through the DMs if you know how to. And you can sell quite, like, we've sold, $24,000 packages, like cash collected, not contract value, total debit through a chat.
Through chat only?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. The first time that happened, that was quite funny. Like my head of sales, Pat, we've got the way our office set up. You've seen it. The podcast studio is where he does all of his sales. And he came out, flung the door open, and like the words that were coming out of his mouth was pretty happy. And I'm like, what's going on? And he just threw me his phone. He was like, look at this. And I was like, what the fuck do you mean? And so I'm scrolling through, and yeah, lo and behold, link sent, paid, collected through Newey.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Just straight on the spot. So yeah, beliefs, that as a belief statement, that was after I taught the client how to do it. Probably 3-4 months later, we had refined it.
Yeah.
And we started doing it. And yeah, if you refine the process enough, like I love being wrong. Like, I love having belief statements like that shifted, because it's like, okay, cool. Now we have another opportunity for growth. And so that's something that if you had told me 2 years ago, even a year ago, hey, you can sell by chat at that level, I would have been like, bullshit.
Yeah.
And this comes back to what I said before, is like, I used to think paid ads were a scam. I used to think sending cold outbound was a scam. I used to think, producing high quality content was a scam. Like, all of it works. And this is, I think, the overarching thing, like not to, cut this podcast short, but it's like everything works, right? You just need to learn how to do it.
Yep.
Like it's like the fact that it worked for someone else is proof that it works. And if it didn't work for you, it's a you problem, not a model problem. And that's where I think like, I say this to clients now that I work with them. It's like, cool. And I'll say it on the front end of like, cool. Like, who have you worked with? What have you done in the past? Why did it work? Why didn't it? And they'll say like, oh, it didn't work because of this. Like, cool. Did you execute it properly? Probably not. It's like, okay, great. Like I have that conversation on the front end because like, I don't try and have any sort of like animosity to other business mentors, consultants. They've all served a purpose. They've all done something. Even if you didn't take direct revenue growth, like you're in this place now with more skill, more answers. And I think candidly having that conversation on the front end of like, yeah, outbound messages might be a very low leverage task, but if you get it right, huge. I got a client over in Perth that her whole business is outbound chat. And she's sitting at like 1.8 mil projected rev for the year. Wow. All outbound chat.
Yep.
And all sell by chat.
No sales calls?
None, zero.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And like runs a very lean team. Like her, 2 support staff, one PA. That's it.
This may contradict what you have just kind of said there, but having not only seen so much growth and success yourself, but now, and we're going to get into this as well, around Undeniable University and what you're doing with your mentoring now as well, which is awesome. What are the most common fuck ups or the most common, I don't know if mistakes is the right word, but things that you have people come to you looking to see a certain level of growth, and it just instantly stands out that there may be something that is so common that many coaches or service-based business owners are doing, which you now know is just not effective or essentially a waste of their time.
Cool. So the first one is going to be pricing. The pricing is not stabilized for long-term growth often. So normally people sit on one end of the spectrum. They very rarely sit in the middle. Spectrum A would like one end of the spectrum, like the most extreme would be we charge weekly and we charge for a fee and we charge for a service on a weekly basis. That's it. Other end of the spectrum would be they charge paid in full and they're doing what's called like high ticket closing. High ticket closing, if we start there first, works incredibly well if you have predictable lead flow, can replace the churn. Problem is the churn's typically aggressive because by nature, people are buying a product. Like it feels like you're still selling a service, but it's a service as a product because they've purchased it once, right? And when people purchase things like as a full cash investment, they expect outcome. So that's where you're selling solution. I think it's like that's not a bad premise.
Yep.
And it's a premise I heavily believe in is sell solution first, but it's a time contained solution. Like I should have outcome by X date because I've purchased that outcome. So then you have a very low rebuy rate, you have a pretty high churn, and it's like quite volatile if you don't have predictable lead flow. So it's like if you're running paid ads and you have really predictable lead flow, like month over month, helpful. But the problem there is that you are then ultimately at the beck and call of your paid advertising, and you can live and die inside of a month of your business. For example, if you spend quite aggressively, let's say you're spending $1,000 a day on ads, you get across that month, you sign up 3 people at a $15,000 container. Right. So we're at a $15,000 profit on that, right, for that month. But you then have to deliver that service over the next, say, 3-6 months. Cool. What happens if next month you don't sign, you still spend 30 grand and you don't sign a third? What if you only sign 2? What if you sign only 1? Right? What if cost of acquisition goes up and you have to spend 40? Right? If you have no reoccurring base in the business, you're at this point where it's like, oh, we have to keep spending. And this is the thing, it's like if you turn off your ads and your churn is like you have a pretty low re-sign rate, inside of a month, your business could be gone. Like your runway is just toast, right? So the middle line of this is like if they're pricing, if we want to try and create predictable long-term scalability is we first must have a reoccurring base. And once we have a reoccurring base, we can have price flexibility and we can try other things and test. But I'm a big fan of trying to build that base first. And that's where like we have the benefits of both, right? High ticket, you get great cash flow. Reoccurring, you get stability. So why can we not just do both?
Yeah.
In which where we take a percentage of the deliverable upfront. let's say off a 12-week commitment, you're normally going to charge $3,000 for your thing. Okay, why can we not charge a percentage of that upfront for the cover of the first 4 weeks and then move into a reoccurring that is already contracted straight away? You get the best of both worlds. You now have a thing that will cost and liquidate the cost of ad, and then you also have the reoccurring base. That's like problem one. Problem two is probably just their inability to scale them. Like they have no back-end support. They want to wear all the hats and they don't have any ability to trust first. So that's like they're the two things that we typically fix up first is like, okay, let's get your pricing model to be more stable.
Yep.
And then let's get a little bit of help so you can kind of go back to revenue raising activities rather than just doing the admin.
Okay, beautiful. I want to quickly touch on AI. Had this conversation again on a few interviews recently. Where do you see people are kind of just fucking around and wasting their time with AI at the moment within business, but where do you feel like the biggest opportunities? And I don't mean, okay, going and building an AI business. I mean more so for someone like myself who's in a service-based industry, how can I essentially be capitalizing on the use of AI to just enhance my day-to-day or my business in a way that's actually going to be effective?
I think the biggest factor is speed.
Yeah.
So it's doing what you do, but just with a larger degree of speed. So like the use of AI will allow you to be faster than your competitors and probably be more astute at what you say. So, okay, how do we apply that? One, you could create a very simple AI agent that if I had my phone, I'd be able to just hold down my action button on my phone. My GPT opens up and talks to me like, hey, what are we doing today? And I will talk to it on the way in the car, on the way to work. That thread feeds straight into a to-do list that is compiled into here are the things that need to get done today. Here are the meetings you have today. And here's what you spoke about with these business owners on their last call. So I rock up to work and I've got, okay, here's the things I need to get done today, blah, blah, blah. Compile a list of who I'm talking to today and get a list ready of what we spoke to so I can be prepared. By the time I get into the office, the AI agent has created that to-do list and brought up a document on my computer that says, speaking to Danny today.
Yep.
Last week you spoke about X, Y, Z. Go. So like me coming into meetings more prepared is now done at the hands of AI.
Yep.
So that's something that yes, that sounds complicated, but that is a somewhat simple pathway to create. So like, okay, that's just a speed vector, organization vector.
Yep.
I think that's a pretty simple one. If we're looking service delivery, you have no excuse now not to be creating assets incredibly fast.
Yeah.
Like the day of like pretty nice ebooks is, in my opinion, over.
Yeah.
I tested this. Like I for 30 days posted Google Docs to my story of which had the highest click-through rate. And by the way, I was going to tell you, didn't update you on this. It worked. From a conversion perspective.
Yep.
It worked aggressively well. And the thought process here is that the market as a whole in any market is more aware of what it feels like to be sold to. So you go to a nice landing page, you see the VSL, you see all these things. And this isn't me saying that they won't work. They definitely will. It's a tried and tested model and it's stood the test of time. But in more isolated markets, especially organic markets, something that's not pretty doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go poor. So, okay, how fast can you create a cheat sheet of insert? Let's say you're a building company, right? And you're customer facing and you're trying to help people flip houses on sale. And like the only thing they have to do is fix up their bathroom. Here's what you need to know about fixing up your bathroom, the 10 need to knows. 3 days later, you get some sort of GPT to create or a Claude AI or any of the ones in between. When fixing up your bathroom, the 10 mistakes you will make. Like you can create assets at a fingertip now. So the delivery of like call to actions and lead magnets should be tenfold and faster than everyone and ever before.
Beautiful. You mentioned before as well that you're kind of known as someone who loves the numbers, which admittedly, me coming into working with you was my biggest fucking weakness for sure.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, for a service-based business owner, what are just like the non-negotiable numbers and data that every service-based business owner should be on top of?
I think the list is long if we're talking real non-negotiables, but if we're talking actionables, ones that will actually give you like a better picture. And like I like data that will give the business owner reactive models that they don't need to go pay someone to get help with. So when you look at the numbers as a whole, if we went through the big long list of non-negotiables, like you could invariably look at your business and go, cool, hole here, plug this, plug that, business grow, right? Like less bad, more good, happy, right? But sometimes that comes down to prior required knowledge. The ones that don't require that much prior knowledge is your churn rate, like month over month, year to date, and year on average. So like how many people are leaving your business? That is, churn is not, and churn is very, I want to be very clear, churn is divorced from acquisition. So most people say, oh, my retention is great. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, oh, we haven't dropped below 100 clients in the last 2 years. Like that's a problem, right? Like if you haven't dropped below, but you haven't hit 200, like that's also an issue.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so when it's divorced from acquisition, we're talking, let's say you have 100 clients on January 1st. Of those 100 clients, we then, let's say across all of January, you sign up 10 more people. So in February, you're at 110, but also you lost 10 of the original 100. So you're still at 100. Things look fine. No, you have a 10% churn.
Yeah.
Right? The acquisition doesn't replace the down. So that's one. If you have a churn rate that is high, if we're and like, you know, do the math on this, 3% month over month, it works out to be a 36% churn, I think. Yeah, 36% churn year over year. So if you push up to 4% though, it goes up to like 48, 46%, something like that. So 1 extra percent a month, you're at a 1 in, 1 out essentially. That's a problem.
That's a problem.
Huge problem. It's like you're just going to always stay where you are. So if you're not at a 3% churn, you have an issue. So you should be doing everything in your power to reduce the amount of people that leave.
Yep.
Second would be your throughput on your whatever platform you're using to acquire leads. So starts on that page or traffic to that page versus conversions from that page. The conversion on that page will tell you a lot. Whether you're asking too many questions, whether your page is poorly designed. Like if your conversion off a direct to client path is less than 20%, we have an issue. So for example, in my world, we use Jotform or Typeform. If that submission on that form is less than 20%, there's an issue. Like
submission, less than 20% of view to submission.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So like that's something that like, again, if there's no rules, there's no guidelines, cool. We now have 2. We need to get below 3% on attrition. We need to get our conversion rate on that direct inquiry pathway to be more than 20, right? Third would also just be retention. Like third is kind of hand in hand with churn, but it's looking at the last 12 months of your business, all the people that did quit, excluding outliers. So those that were, you know, sick, injured, doctor certificate, or moved away, right? Let's say you have a physical service in person. Exclude all the outliers and exclude the ones that were, you know, OGs that have been with you for 7 years, right? We want to look at the data set of the last 12 months of those that left. What week were they in when they left? And this is now we've got, let's say, 30 people that left. Some left at week 12, some exited and quit at week 30. We average that, and now we have your highest point of risk of churn. So your risk point of churn, right? We know that churn might be 3, 10, 12%, but when is it most likely to happen? And at that point, you can start to combat a descending value proposition in your business, and every service, a blanket rule, is commoditized over time. People get used to it. People adapt to it. People like speak to you on a weekly basis. In a year's time, that time feels less valuable because it now feels normal.
Yep.
Right. This is where like a comparison. Unfortunately, you know, humans as a whole, on average, typically get unless, you know, and I think that this comes down to the selection of how you do this. But let's say you have a partner and you've selected that partner poorly, right? Over time, people get bored, and that's why they look for the quote unquote woman in the red dress, right? They look for the greener grass on the other side of the fence because things have just become normal, right? Whereas like if the relationship is good, you'd arguably grow and adapt together, and the relationship always feels amazing.
Yep.
Right. But most, unfortunately, a lot of the time relationships get commoditized, and that's where a lot of people will look left and start, you know, assuming that life could be different in different circumstances. Same goes here, where over time you have this descending value exchange, where like the longer you're with someone, the more normal, the less grateful you are for the situation.
Yep.
If you know that average point of risk and where they're most likely to churn out, you can build more value, you can get things more fun, you can spice things up so that they stick around and move. And you can do that through a number of ways. You can add more value. You could earn, not given. You could give them things. So like you could give them a cool hat. You could give them some earned, not given apparel where it's like, this is only given to people that reach this point in time. You could make it cheaper, right? There's a lot of things that you can do at a certain point in time if you know that the numbers suggest you have a high point of risk.
Yep.
And that's something, if people just knew those three things of like, when will people leave? A percentage of people that leave. And like, what was my third? I forgot my own thing.
The third one.
Yeah, so it was churn, leave point. What else did I say? Helpful.
leave point was the third one, wasn't it?
Yeah. So what was my first?
Churn.
Second, price.
Price, sorry.
So if you have these three things of price, churn, and leave point, like you're in a place of your business should tell you what is wrong.
Yeah.
So like, for example, if you look at your price and you go, a large percentage of our income is like not reoccurring and I have no stability. I don't know what I'm going to make this time next year. Problem.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. If I don't know when people are also going to leave, I don't know when I need to add more value or change my business model. And then we also, like from a churn perspective, like that will allow you, like knowing your churn will allow you, give you so much strategical advantage in your competitors because most people just don't check it.
Yep.
Like a little fun thing on churn too. Like if you have 10% churn and you pull that to 5%, you increase your profits by 50%.
By 50%.
Your profit. Because if you just reduce the amount of people, so at a 10% to 5%, that's a 50% reduction in people that leave, which means the LTV of your client goes up by 50%.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks.
So like from a profit perspective, like where else in business by making a 5% change,
can you increase profits by that much? Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Like that's like some life-changing money.
Yeah. Yeah. And that type of shit often gets overlooked. I know for sure, obviously, as I said, I wasn't necessarily on top of numbers at all, really, when we started together. But stuff like that is not things that I would consider purely because I just didn't have the data.
Here's the thing as well, right? Like a lot of people hear me say, "Oh, track your numbers." I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do it eventually. To give you an example of what it feels like to not have your churn and numbers like your churn specifically, to not have that under control, is when you wake up and your business feels scary, where you feel like your breaths are more shallow and you're worried of what will happen in the next 6 months and you just have to post more. If you feel like you're at the beck and call of posting and never knowing like, have I actually built a business? I guarantee your churn is not good and you should do it today. Because that's the one thing that brought some oxygen back into the lungs. It's like, if I can see when people, if I can understand that like when people are going to leave and how many of them are going to leave, if I just know that, I'm like, all right, well, predictably, we're going to lose 7 people next month. All right, well, I now have a target.
Yeah.
Right? Like I have something that I'm working on. I'm not just like on the hedonic treadmill, just going. You're actually walking with intention. With
direction, yeah. Love it, man. Before we touch on undeniable, because I'd love for you to share a bit about that for those that are listening, and guys, again, we'll have like the links to all of this shit in the show notes below. I've got a question for you. I don't know whether this is then going to lead to, I don't know if this is too big of a question or not, but fuck it, I'm going to ask it anyway. Right now, if you were starting from scratch, right? Let's just say you've got $1,000 to spend, right? Or you've got $1,000 available to you. You've got all your skill sets, all your experience up until this point, all your knowledge that you've got, and you had to build a service-based business to a $1 million a year revenue as fast as possible. What would you do?
So we're talking just shy of $85,000 a month.
Yep.
Call it $20,000 a week, and I have $1,000.
Yep.
Okay. Same skill set that I have.
Yep.
Cool. I'd spend $1,000 to get myself a uniform and branding on me, and I would walk and I would knock on doors and I would tell people that I will either, if I can go back to grassroots, I will get them fit and I'll come to their house and I'll train them for the next 7 days for free. I'll be here tomorrow, same time, and I'll do it for free every day. And then I'll upsell at some point in that 7 days. Yep. Or if I could get into walk around a business park like this, I'd go knock on doors and go, hey, I can come and work in your business because if $1,000 cost me $500 to get some branding, get some logos, make myself look a little bit professional. The other $500 I'll just put towards mac and cheese and I will eat that, right? and I will work for free for 30 days, but all I want in return is whatever return I give you over the next 30 days, I want 5% off.
Beautiful.
Because I know that like if it comes down to if it comes down to nothing, have no money, right? The thing you have is time. And this is like call it polarizing, call it not. Like I don't understand the concept of people doing nothing, right? Like I'm sure everyone has their own circumstances and call it what it is. But I'll say this with my chest that I know that every person that is sitting on the sidewalk holding a sign saying, please give me money, could knock on the door of a business and say, I will mow your lawn. Right? I will mow your lawn and I will do it for free. Right? Give me a pair of scissors and I will cut it with scissors. Like the desire to grow and the desire to get something back comes down to how much work are you willing to put. So I would gladly go cut grass with scissors. And then how do I get that to $1 million business? Okay, $20,000 a week. Let's say we're looking at then trying to go, okay, can I do that on my own? Probably not. Let's say a lawn care business, no. But could I build up to a point where I'm doing $10,000 of lawns in a week? Yeah. Right. So to just be like, okay, mow the lawn, that's going to be a $100 cut. I'm also going to do the weeds. That'll probably be a little bit more. I upsell it on the go. And then once I've done that person's lawn, I go and knock on the neighbors like, hey, we normally have a call out fee. I'm here now. Do you want me to do it? Right. And stack upsells in localized areas. I think that would be like, if I had no skill set, that's what I'd do. But from a mentoring perspective or from a building business perspective, if I did it as a rev share, you could get there pretty quick.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. Rev share model is like, that's something that I've toyed with the idea of even pivoting to like now in the, like, cause now that I work with some of the business that I do that like the biggest business that I work with at the moment is like revving around the $20 million mark. And like, they've worked with me for 4 months and they've had an increase from 18 to 20.
Wow.
$2 million rev point.
Yeah.
Like it's like, as a percentage, it's piss all, right? It's like 10%, 11%. But like,
in a short period of time. Though.
Yeah, in a short period of time, like they've grown by that much. But also, if I had said, "Hey, give me 5% of the top that I give you," that'd be way more than what I've been paid.
100%.
So like, it's something that it's also no risk for the business owner. Of like,
yeah, exactly.
Pay me nothing unless I help you grow. I've toyed with the idea of it. I would probably consider doing it with big businesses.
Yeah.
Because they have like cash flow viability to do pretty much anything. They say, "Hey, we're going to do this." They have the available funds to make it happen.
Yep.
So yeah, it's something I'd consider. But yeah, if I was starting from the ground up, I'd do a rev share model.
Love it, bro.
It's no risk.
Yeah, exactly. What, tell the listeners a bit about Undeniable, what we're doing with that in particular, because I think it is an absolute gold mine for any service-based business owner by far. And I'm obviously not just saying this because you're on the podcast, but by far the most valuable investment in any form of business, again, service-based, but any form of business mentorship or coaching or course, whatever you want to call it, like it is an absolute jackpot. Give the listeners a bit of insight into what it's about and how they can also kind of access it too.
So a little bit of a story to it. As I said before, I've reached a point where I'm supply constrained, where like I can only take on X amount of business owners at Y time. And that's something that I saw was going to be a problem a while ago. So I started to try and create a learning model of everything that I knew that was experience led and putting it into one place. I started that 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. And it took 9 months to create, maybe even 10, but it took a while of me just building this out, filming, creating. And the main model that I wanted to deploy was it needed to have actionable process rather than just information, because information is readily available and easy to access. It's free everywhere in the world, especially with the use of AI now. Like information you can find.
Yeah.
But what do you implement as a percentage? Very low.
Yeah.
So long story short, I tried to create a model that would create a solution to the problem of time for me, but also not add to the problem of one-to-many group courses typically have a pretty bad name, and like the completion rate of online courses is atrocious. It's like the world data on that it's absurd. It's very, very low. I think it's like 4% throughput. It's insane. So like 96% of people that go through these online learning models don't complete them. And so from day one that I built it, I wanted it to be segmented out in a place that if followed and if actioned, not only would people know stuff, but their business would make more money and it would quote unquote feel better, right? So yeah, it's a hub of which we lean on data first. we give a lot of information education and always push it back into real world example rather than here's the fluffy information. Each lesson has an action item of like, go do this today. Of which we've still had our problems with. I think like the learning curve to that is like you put anyone in a place where they get self-led education, it's predicated on their ability to actually lead and self-lead. So main problems that we had with was like inactivity, people coming in being like, wow, there's lots here, and getting overwhelmed by the amount that's there, which was somewhat intentional in the beginning. Like Professor Galloway taught, like he teaches this thing of like, I can't remember what he calls it, but I've just kind of recalled it as the value wheel, as like head, heart, gut, genitals. He talks about it in a marketing sense, not so much as a product sense, but it comes across pretty well that like head, you can educate, heart, you can create community, gut, you can essentially facilitate this like need to always have more. There's just so much that I'm never left hungry. And that was the case of like, okay, when people get into this platform, I want them to be overwhelmed with how much they can learn so that they are more obliged to stay. Good in theory, bad in practice. People only want to stay if they're actually getting value, and value is all good and well in its perceived value is all good and well, but experiential value is what wins. So we've had a 2% churn rate off the like people have been staying, but like when we've been doing our like development phase, the common thing is like there's just so much of like I don't know the direction to go. So we've had to really like go back to the drawing board a couple times, and now we've got to a point where we're very happy with the deliverables. That the first 7 days is very predictable. We tailor that process, and it's very much they get a custom one-on-one roadmap of like, where is your business now? What is the main problem? What's working? What's broken? So then we create like a first, next, then framework. First, you're going to do this section of the course. Next, you'll do this section of the course. Then you'll do this section of the course, and then you will report back. Right. And making it that it is a little bit more customized on the front end, but also tailored or drip fed, probably a better word, on the front end as well. So that we can actually we can centralize the control of what they consume first so that they don't get overwhelmed with what happens next. So our first 8 days now are very like, okay, first we're going to look at your acquisition pipeline. Then we're going to look at some basic ad models, right? And it's just and like third day is like, we're going to get some quick cash back into your business with the intention that it covers the full investment before the end of your first 7 days. And we've tested it, we've modeled it, it works. And really excited to have it. That was boring and unenjoyable work to test and model that, but it's definitely paid off. And I believe that if it was a course that I did, and I think this is a lens that I looked through, if it was something that I had have logged into 10 years ago, would it have worked? And will it also work in 10 more years? And that's where I can confidently say with my chest that it will.
Incredible, man. Well, brother, I appreciate your time again today, man. It's been a pleasure as always to have a chat. And again, I've obviously said this to you outside of the pod, but I appreciate everything you do. I've learned so much from you already, and I'm so fucking excited to see where we can keep pushing things throughout this year and beyond. And appreciate your time, man. And for everyone who has tuned in, as I said, there will be links to all of Rhys's stuff below. If you are a service-based business owner, again, I can't fucking stress enough just how much value is in Undeniable, and undoubtedly you will take your business to the next level and beyond inside that community and with what Rhys and his team have built out. So again, the link will be in the show notes below. Appreciate your time again, brother. And thanks everyone who's tuned in today.
See ya.